Hi, I'm Julie Balderrama. I'm the founder of Heart Mind Healing Arts and the Self-Love Legacy. Welcome to your 3-day Self-Love Fest. I'm redoing the video for naming your heart's desire because the first video that I did was a little bit too long, so I'm going to try to condense the information here for you and make a little bit of a shorter video. And I'll go ahead and just ask for your forgiveness in the service of making sure that I get the information to you. I do have some notes here and I may occasionally glance at them. So I'm letting go of my story about how to show up on video and whether I should have notes and how to memorize and all that. So letting that perfection, that little perfectionism in me go, which is another self-love practice that I do. But today we're talking about naming your heart's desires. And for some of us, we have, we feel a little bit uncomfortable about that. There's oftentimes a little lifting and a little expansiveness that happens when we talk about naming our heart's desires. But then sometimes there can be an immediate contraction because there are stories for most of us, for a lot of us, around naming our heart's desires, around naming and claiming our wants, our needs, and our desires. And we all have a little bit of a different story, but I've noticed in the work that I do with clients and even with myself that there tends to be kind of a commonality. One of those stories has to do with if I have wants and needs and desires, that makes me a bad person in some way. So that can be a variation on I'm not a spiritual person, or I'm not enlightened if I have wants and needs and desires, or if I ask to have my needs met, or I take steps to have my needs met. Another variation of that story is that I'm selfish. So that comes up a lot as well. And then sometimes there's the story of everybody else's needs and wants and desires are more important than mine, and we put them before our needs and wants and desires. So we're out there really, really busy taking care of everybody else's wants and needs and desires and never turning towards ourselves to do for ourselves what we're doing for everybody else. And that sets us up sometimes for an existence, a life, an experience where we sometimes get into the place where we think, what about me? Who's going to take care of me, right? So if I'm taking care of everybody else and I'm not taking care of me, we definitely get into that place where we're thinking, well, who's going to take care of me? What about me? And the easy solution to that is for you to take care of you, right? But we can't do that until we start to name our wants, our needs, and our desires. So when we name them, when we take that opportunity to name them, it really liberates us from this idea that we're not worthy, right? Because it kind of boils down to self-worth. Everybody else's needs and wants and desires are more important than mine, right? But if I set that aside and I start to take care of, well, first of all, name them, and then take care of my wants, needs, and desires, suddenly I am physically embodying the idea that I am worthy of my needs being met. And so, of course, doing things that send our system, our body, our consciousness the message that we are worthy, of course, is a very loving thing to do. It's part of our self-love practice, okay? So imagine, if you will, or go back in your memory and think about a time when you have engaged in a behavior that seemed like it was out of your control. So the thing that comes to mind for me is mindless eating. And, there've definitely been times when I've found myself at the end of a sleeve of cookies thinking, how in the heck did that happen, right? And I know that when that happens, I physically don't feel well. I definitely physically can notice that I do not feel well. And then, of course, my inner critic gets activated, and emotionally, I don't feel well either. Well, when we engage in mindless behavior like that, and that can be, binge watching television, it can be scrolling through Facebook endlessly, It can be shopping, it can be drinking, it can be, over busy, like piling things up and saying yes to a bunch of things that we may or may not want to do. So there's a variety of different ways that we can engage in mindless behavior that seems a little bit out of our control. But when we do that, what I've found is that usually when I engage in that behavior, or when my clients engage in that behavior, it's because there is a need that's not being met. And because we're uncomfortable with naming and claiming our wants and needs and desires, rather than turning inward to say, oh, what's that need that's not being met? Because maybe I feel uncomfortable with that process, again, because of those stories that we talked about just a moment ago. Instead of turning inward and saying, what's the need that's not being met, I engage in mindless behavior in order to mask that need, right? So think about it. When we engage in mindless behavior, like mindless eating or watching a bunch of television, we kind of numb out, right? So we do a pretty good job of masking that need. But what happens if I turn inward instead and I say, what is the need here? What is my need that's not being met? And I've definitely done that before, and I find oftentimes one of the needs, the main needs that's not being met for me when I engage in those types of mindless behavior is connection. I really crave connection with people, and for me, I find that I work best when I strike a very delicate balance between connection with other people and some solitary time, some alone time, some time where I can turn inward and get introspective. But too much of that time, and I start to crave connection with people. And if I can't name that, then I engage in behavior that's trying to mask that need for connection. So for you, it might be different, but it's definitely worth turning inward and asking yourself, what is the need here? All right, so let's try a little exercise. Let's pause the video here in just a second. Pause the video for about 2 minutes, and I want you to set the alarm on your phone or however you want to gauge 2 minutes, right? And just get out a piece of paper and a pen and make a list of your wants, your needs, and desires. And I really, really encourage you to dream big. Let yourself dream big. I mean, we all have wants and needs and desires that fall along the spectrum of, I want connection, I desire connection, I want alone time. I know that I want that as well. But I also know that I would really, really love to travel to Hawaii. So I'm going to put that on my list as well. I want a new car. Right? I want to make a certain amount of money. So let yourself kind of push those edges of what it feels, even what it may feel uncomfortable to you to say, I want this, right? And you can notice the stories that come up as you do that and just acknowledge that they're there and ask them to just, hang out for you for a little while. The stories that pop up around this, that's a whole other video that we'll do, or a whole other call that we'll do. But they will pop up, and you can definitely acknowledge them and just ask them to sit to the side for a second. All right, so pause the video, take 2 minutes, and make a list of your wants and your needs and your desires, and everything you can think of, big and small. All right. Okay, so hopefully you did that exercise, and we're going to use the exercise tomorrow too. So if you did not do the exercise, do please take some time to do the exercise. Let's just check in. How did that feel for you? Was that uncomfortable for you? Was it exciting? It might have been exciting. It might have felt very expansive. It might have felt very liberating. It might have been a combination of the two feelings, right? Some of the needs and wants and desires might have been like a big sigh for you, like your system is saying, finally you're acknowledging that this is a need, right? Or it might have been a different reaction of, you can't want that. That's not possible for you to have. Why are you even writing that down? So again, that's a whole other video, a whole other call that we can work with at another time. But just noticing that those voices are there and acknowledging that they're there is a self-love practice in and of itself. Not squashing down any of the voices that are coming up and really leaving room, lots of space for all parts of you, all voices to exist and to be seen and to be heard. So I wanted to let you know that, as Caroline Casey says, cooperators are standing by. I truly believe that the universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it, is abundant and has limitless resources and is standing by, waiting to help you fulfill your wants, your needs, and desires. But it requires that you claim them and name them first, right? So by doing this exercise, we really have already sort of like sent this vibration out into the universe that says, yes, I'm claiming this, right? And the universe is just, like hanging out in this storeroom of wants and needs and desires of abundance. And it's like waiting for you to come up and go, yeah, that's mine. And it's waiting for you to do that. And it's ready to give it to you. It's ready to give it to you. The universe, source, God, is limitless in resources. And so by claiming your needs, your wants, and your desires, you're not taking away from anybody else, right? And in fact, you're actually raising this vibration of we get to all be fulfilled, all of us, right? So we're getting out of this scarcity mentality and moving into a mentality of abundance this way by claiming our wants and needs and desires. Let me say that again. By claiming our wants, our needs, and our desires, we're moving out of a scarcity mentality because we're saying there is enough to go around. There is enough for everyone to have their wants, their needs, and desires fulfilled, right? Super important. We have all kinds of ways to get out of this scarcity mentality. We talk about scarcity mentality a lot, how to move into abundance. And I find that this is one of the key ways is to go ahead and name and claim and take steps to fulfill our wants, our needs, and our desires. Alrighty, so I just want to check my notes here and see if I've gotten anything else. Oh, that being said, so we know that, right, everything has extremes. We have extremes everywhere. So we have the extreme, obviously, of completely ignoring our wants, our needs, and desires. But then the other extreme is when our wants, our needs, and desires can move into obsession and addiction. And we have that. It's the yin and the yang. It's how the world works, and we want to stay in flow, and we want to stay in balance, right? So we want to find that sweet spot, that middle spot, where we're not ignoring our wants and needs and desires, but we're not totally attached to our wants, our needs, and desires, where they become obsessions or they become addictions. And so having, an exercise of unattachment to things, right? So we name it, we claim it. We're going to talk in some subsequent videos about how we want to go about fulfilling our wants and needs and desires. But through the whole process, we do want to remain somewhat unattached to those wants and needs and desires. Not detached, meaning I'm ignoring it, right? That's the ignoring it part. But unattached, as in it comes in, it flows out. I bring it into the heart, and I release it. So there are, I have a couple of videos that I've done on Periscope, and I have some other videos out there where I do a really lovely practice called Gathering and Release. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can definitely get in touch with me, and I'll send you that video. I'll see if I can find it on Catch. Another thing that you can do is have a mindfulness practice. So mindfulness goes a long way to keeping us in that space of unattachment. When we have a mindfulness practice, what we do is we cultivate a space between a thought or a feeling and our reaction to it. So having a mindfulness practice, an active mindfulness practice, meaning you practice mindfulness in some way every day, is another great way to stay balanced and in the middle with our wants, our needs, and desires. I do have a program as well called Love Your Body Now, which is basically 3 weeks of a mindfulness practice. And it's a really lovely program. It's got three audios that I send you that are mindfulness practices, and then there's emails every day that come to you that talk about the neuroscience behind it, talk about forming habits, give you some tips about your mindfulness practice, what it's doing. So if that's something that you're interested in checking out, please get in touch with me. I also have a community on Facebook called the Self-Love Tent, and it's a really lovely community of people who are dedicated to a self-love practice. So if that's something that you'd like to come and join us, come play, come cultivate your self-love practice, I'd love to have you in there. You can get in touch with me by emailing heartmindqi, Q-I, at gmail.com. And of course, you can always reply to this email, and you can find me on Facebook at Heart Mind Healing Arts. Thank you so much for joining the Self-Love Fest. I'm so excited to be sharing these tips with you. They've definitely made huge impact on my life and on my clients' lives, and I hope that you will find them helpful as well. All right, have a blessed day. Bye-bye.